So what you've probably been seeing throughout the news media is the NAR settlement that has come up recently. Of course, there's been a lot of talk about it. It's still in its basically probationary period in terms of when they're going to come in for an appeal, see what's going to change with the NAR settlement itself. But overall, it is shaking up the real estate industry and what's going to happen between buyers' commissions and sellers' commissions. But regardless of all that, this video today is actually dedicated to what it could possibly do to the VA loans coming up. So if you are a veteran, you have served our country, please stick around for this video because you're going to want to know what is now going to be affected possibly with the NAR settlement that's coming across in terms of your VA loan and how you can use it when it comes down to those commissions set forth by the rules in the Department of Veterans Affairs. And today I do have Matthew Pfeiffer here with me from Axia Home Loans. He is also the Government Director of Affairs for the Veterans Administration of Real Estate Professionals. I am also a member myself. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to sit down, we're going to cover this, and we're going to let you know, veterans, what you could be possibly facing when it comes to using your VA loan. So as we start this, first off, Matt, I just want to go ahead and ask, let's go ahead and let's get a breakdown of what the current rules with the Department of Veteran Affairs really sets forth for veterans that want to use their loan, and how is this NAR settlement going to potentially affect them?
Okay. So just to back up just a little bit, for those that don't know, the VA home loan is a benefit that veterans earn while they're serving, and it allows them to buy a house with zero money down, and the loan is backed by the federal government. So it's a great loan. The idea is they don't want veterans having to rent. They definitely don't want veterans on the street. They want them to be homeowners. So they created this loan so that they can get into a place without having to go through all the same things that other people do with saving for a down payment, amongst other things. The plan right now, or the way it's written right now, is that a veteran cannot pay any of the commissions or fees. So right now, when a veteran goes to buy a house, he contacts a realtor. The realtor represents them in this transaction, but right now the commission comes from the seller's side, and this has been this way for well over 30 years. When they change that to be not universal, and we don't know where that's coming from, the vets have an obstacle to get over, and that is that they cannot pay for it themselves. So we have to start thinking, where is that going to come from, or what rule is going to be changed? I can tell you right now, they're still hoping that maybe something will happen and settle, differently. But all we know is what we can see. We can see the current rule. We can see what the NAR settlement is going to propose. And those that are looking at it realize that there's going to be an obstacle for veterans, and that is who's going to pay for it. And is that going to prevent them from buying houses? I know that right now, sometimes the VA home loan in different areas already gets discriminated against because sometimes the seller is asked to pay for a little bit more than if they were working with a conventional loan. It shouldn't be too much, but sometimes that's already pushing it a little bit, $500, $800, whatever it is, that the seller might say, you know what, I'd still rather take that conventional offer. If we have to start asking sellers to cover an extra $12,000 to $15,000 in commission, it's a severe disability for them. They're gonna have to try really, really hard to get that one passed.
That's right. And actually, really, based upon the rules right now, they're not even allowed to do that.
Not at all.
So yeah, they're not allowed to be able to pitch towards their commissions or any kind of fees. So if that seller actually wants to kick back and say, no, I don't want to give you anything, or I want to, well, they really can't think about it if they're under contract per se. It's got to be something that's negotiated on the front and be able to be presented by a realtor over to the seller and say, hey, are you willing to pick this up? But considering the current climate, and when you got left-wing news agencies like CNN, MSNBC, and even the President of the United States coming out and saying, hey, we're disrupting, a standard 6%, which never existed, by the way. It's always been negotiable, in that aspect. But when you're laying that out there, you're kind of creating a dissension, in the ranks, to where I see sellers actually testing the waters and saying, well, let's see if the buyers can go ahead and pick up the whole entire enchilada, in that aspect, and be able to push back against the veterans and say, we're just not going to go ahead and pitch towards those commissions or fees anymore, which puts them in that pickle, according to the Department of Veteran Affairs, correct?
Right. I mean, it's one of two issues. Either they can't do it because the the underwriting guidelines for the VA don't allow them to pay this thing, or there's going to be a lot of discrimination where veterans are just being looked over completely. Because if you're selling your house, you want to get as much as you can, and take an extra 3%, 2% even to pay that veteran's agent, it's just going to get passed over.
Right. And there is a lot of talk too. A lot of these agencies are saying for realtors to go ahead and basically kind of work in a pro bono aspect. And I don't know of anybody that's out there to work for free. I mean, I love my veterans, don't get me wrong, but I also do have a roof that I have to put over my head. Just like Matt's got a roof to put over his head. And that's really going to come down to how this is going to be structured along realtors too, as the NAR settlement itself really starts to be understood. And we already know buyers' representation's got to come into this aspect before we can show homes, etc., and be able to talk about that commission structure with our clients before we start actually creating the process to be able to get you into home ownership. But the big thing here for VA loans is also, I see it on my end as a realtor, to be able to explain to them now saying, hey, because you cannot pay for commissions or fees, that this could be a reality, that you could be looking at a particular home that you might really like that you won't be able to get. And that's actually really, really infuriating to me, because I love our veterans and I love everything that they've done for us to be able to protect us in this country and give us the freedoms and the right for home ownership in the first place, right?
Absolutely. I think, again, a lot of the things that people are not thinking of is, the secondary stuff that I have to deal with as a lender. I know the VA is limited to 4% in seller concessions. So I hear people saying, well, just write it into the concessions. Just ask the seller to cover that much. A lot of times I have veterans that are already asking for 2 to 3% to cover their closing costs. So if they can come in with no down payment, closing costs are covered, they walk away with, just pocket change getting into this house. If we're capped at 4%, then again, you're not going to have that commission in there. You're asking way more than is allowed. But even if like I said, even if the VA does change that and they up it to 6 or 7%, who's going to give 7% of their house? Nobody's going to do that.
And especially with the climate and everything that they've been pushing, creating that distinction between really buyers and sellers commissions. Again, it reverts back to, I see a lot of the sellers now testing the water in terms of being able to separate that and keep more money for themselves. So it's really going to shake up our industry as it comes along. But the VA loans, again, is what I'm really focused on here, and the content of this. This is why I've got Matt here. Matt constantly goes out, or every single year will go out to Congress. He will lobby Congress and say, hey, these are the changes that needs to happen for our veterans so that they continue to get their loans on a fair aspect, on a fair level as compared to anything else. And I love that aspect that you do that. But right now, I know that there's other groups out there like the VFW, you've got DAV, you've got all that. But do they really have the power and the structure that VA Rep has if VA Rep were to become an actual VSO like they are?
Yep. So, I mean, again, we're talking a lot of speculation as far as what will happen, but I do know that right now, veterans do not have a VSO, an advocate for them in Congress, a group that is boots on ground, that knows loans, that knows the real estate industry, that knows what's going on and can help them out. We, as the VA rep, we are the professionals. We know this stuff, and we want to have that ability to fight for our veterans. And we actually have a bill. We have 2 bills, one in the House, and we have a companion bill in the Senate to get that congressional charter. So just like the VFW and the American Legion, DAV, the ones that you were talking about, those guys are great. They know what they're doing in their fields. If you have questions about disability, you have questions about your retirement, you have questions about medical coverage, you have questions about the GI Bill for education, there's lots of VSOs out there that focus on those benefits and can help them out. But when it comes to housing, they just tell you, hey, it's a great benefit, but you need a lender, so just go talk to a bank or somebody else. They'll help you out. And again, those guys may not steer them in the right direction, and they're definitely not going to Congress and fighting for the veteran to make sure that they're taken care of. And this NAR settlement is a perfect example of why we need to be a VSO, why we need to have that voice out there, because right now we're talking about it, but the whole industry is focused on the compensation and everything else, and they're really overlooking the impact that this is going to have on veteran buyers. If nothing is done, we're going to see a major dip in VA loans for months. I mean, until they can figure out something administrative or come up with a law to fix this, there's going to be quite a difficulty getting veterans into homes using that loan. So again, we have the bills in Congress right now, and we just need support. We need a lot of them to join in and say, hey, this organization knows what they're doing. They need to be in front of Congress explaining these things, because as of now, there isn't anybody, and we can see that they're not looking out for them. And that's exactly what we want to do.
Right, right. And remember, the settlement is still in the preliminary phase. I mean, there is a chance that it could win on appeal, and none of this ever comes to fruition. But if you take a look at who's really behind this, okay, really you've got the Biden administration, DOJ, you have Biden himself, you have a lot of big, heavy hands. Probably BlackRock is in there, I'm sure, being able to kind of push this litigation forward to become a standard practice. So I honestly feel that this is going to come to standard practice, and the veterans are really going to have to face this up the road. I mean, do you feel the same way?
One way or another. I mean, this is, like I said, this is a great example of it, but we have been fighting for veterans for a lot of different issues over the past many years, and this is not going to be the last one.
No, it won't.
So, I mean, it came to fruition right recently, and it's a perfect example that we need to be out there. But whether or not this does happen, we still need to be the advocates for the veterans, because this is not the end of it. As you mentioned, there's a lot of players, and they have a lot of different goals, and a lot of times the veteran is left beside.
Right. And I know right now, especially me and Matt, we've been talking about this since basically the NAR settlement came out. I've been pretty vocal about it across the board. So has Matt. And honestly, I'm pushing forward, and I'm asking for you. I'm asking for you watching this video to be able to contact your representatives out there in Congress here in Idaho, and be able to push them, or any other state that you are in, that this is going to come and play an issue for our veterans overall. Contact your local representatives. Let them know that, hey, changes need to be made to the VA structure set forth by the Department of Veteran Affairs, to be able to pivot to allow that if this becomes into fruition, if this litigation becomes actual standard practice come July 1st of this year, 2024, that it needs to pivot in order to allow our vets to still be able to use the loan that they fought so hard to earn. That's just the way that I feel about it. I know Matt feels about that. So I encourage you out there watching again this video, please contact your representatives. Of course, if you have any further questions too, feel free to reach out to me. Feel free to reach out to Matt. You'll see our contact information below. But please reach out to us with any other further questions, and support also your local Veterans Administration of Real Estate professional group, especially if you're in real estate, if you're in lending, if you're even a home inspector, doesn't matter. Get into that group, know about that group, and help that group become a chartered VSO so that we can go ahead and protect our veterans and their rights.
Yep. HR 3240 and S2964. We'll have the information in the comments. Those are the two bills that we need support on. So look them up if you need to. HR 3240, 3240. And that's what we're pushing right now. We'd hope to get this in the NDAA. But whether or not we can, we need support. We need these congressmen to know that that's out there, and that, again, it's breaking ground, starting something that absolutely is necessary. It's just been a gap, and we are there to fill that financial and home knowledge for the veterans.
So one of the last aspects I just kind of want to touch upon before we kind of end this video and wrap everything up, and just kind of give that call to action to you all and let you know how to go ahead and counteract this. Of course, we know that you could always represent yourself. If you're a veteran, you're a buyer out there, you can go directly to the seller. You can try and represent yourself. In some cases, I'm sure that the listing agent will probably go ahead and try and double end the deal. But one of the things that I want to mention about that is that if it is a double-ended deal to where they're representing both the buyer and the seller, they do have to play a neutral role here when it comes to in Idaho. They cannot levy favoritism over one or the other. And really, in my industry, that kind of really reduces the level of service that you can possibly get, as a realtor. It is my job as a realtor, especially on the buyer side, to absolutely represent my veteran or any of my clients that are coming through to the absolute best of my ability. Everything from negotiations following through to negotiating for your inspections, to getting you concessions, whatever I can go out there and basically get for you and fight for you and make sure that I'm always representing you in the 100% interest. You can always go out to title too if you want them to have to do the paperwork for you, but are they going to take you around, show you homes, all that kind of stuff? No, they're not going to. And even a lawyer. You can go out there and have a lawyer, run a bunch of this paperwork for you too. But are they going to go out and show you homes? And are they really going to be cheaper in the end, considering that a good lawyer can charge you anywhere from about $350 an hour to $700 an hour? So, either way, having a professional representation from realtors, this is what we do. This is what we go through. This is what we show you our value and how we're able to stick up for you 100%. And even on the lender side, correct?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I see it all the time. The few times that I have seen any of my clients that are being represented by the same as the seller, it hasn't worked out. And I know a lot of realtors that just don't like doing both sides because they know it's questionable. You don't want to be that person. I look at it like this. If somebody came up and said, hey, I'm suing you, and their lawyer came and delivered the paperwork, would you ask that lawyer to represent you against them? No, of course not.
Well, that's conflict of interest too. They can't do that. But
I don't know why it's not considered a conflict of interest in this one, because like you said, there's a lot of negotiations. There's a lot of things that you want somebody that knows what they're doing, that knows all the ins and outs and does this on a daily basis, that knows the things to look for, especially in inspection and stuff like that you don't want to go through and just buy the house, not have that person fighting for you, and then find out these things afterwards. That's just not the way you want to do it. So absolutely, representation is very important. And I hate to see veterans deciding, hey, if I can't pay for it, I'm just gonna have to do it myself. Because then we're back to that issue with the VA wanting the veteran to get into a house that works, that's, everything is good to go. You're gonna start seeing that level of home ownership deteriorate because they're representing themselves and they're not catching all these things.
Absolutely.
It's just gonna work against it.
Right, 100%. And that's our job as realtors, is to be there constantly for everything that's gonna possibly pop up, to be able to work with you against the seller so that you're not getting blindsided from any of this. I mean, there's also appraisals that come into things. There's a lot to this aspect. A lot of people think that realtor just kind of, we're drafting up the contracts, we're showing you some homes, we're making it all pretty and all that. No, we really go out there, we fight, we do everything we possibly can to represent you. Because for most of us realtors out there, it's not about the paycheck, it's about your referrals. And if we're not doing a good job for you, we're not getting any referrals. At least that should be the way it is for most realtors. Now, I know that there are some realtors out there that are all about the commission check. They really kind of don't care. They're kind of lackadaisical. Well, I know I'm not one of them. And I definitely know that Matt's not one of them when it comes to him being a senior loan officer and how he loves our vets. And I think you can tell by this video that that's where we're at. So if you are looking for professional representation on that aspect and you are using a VA loan, please feel free to reach out to me and Matt. We're more than happy to represent you and go into detail about from A to Z what it is we do to protect you against the seller. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time again to watch this video. Of course, feel free to reach out with any questions that you got. Feel free to look into your local VA rep charter that's out in your particular area. And then let's protect our vets, everybody. Let's keep them rolling. Let's give them the advantages that they work so hard to accomplish through their service here with our country. And let's keep America great, everyone. Let's keep America great. All right, and I look forward to seeing you all in the next video. And we'll go ahead and talk then. God bless everybody. Until then, look forward to calling you my neighbor. Bye-bye.